Few people have been able to win over people's hearts as much as Rick Harrison of Pawn Stars on the History Channel. As a result, you can only imagine how startling it was when word spread that Rick would get a life sentence. Because Rick has experienced some rather significant legal troubles and personal problems during his life, this rumor received greater attention. Let's look at what transpired with Rick Harrison and find out how he is doing now. Richard Benjamin Harrison and Joanne Rue Harrison welcomed Rick into the world on March 22, 1965. Rick was the third of his parents' 4 children, along with Sherry, Joseph, Rick and Chris. When Rick lost his sister Sherry Joanne Harrison at a young age, he began to endure horrible catastrophes. Sherry was born with Down syndrome and was the Harrisons' first child. Sadly, she died when she was 6 years old. To make matters worse, Rick himself suffered from epileptic seizures since he was 8 years old, which forced him to spend a lot of time reading books in bed. His lifelong passion for reading and literature, particularly those pertaining to history and science, was ignited by this. One of his favorite series is The Great Brain by John D. Fitzgerald, which starred Tom D. Fitzgerald, a 10-year-old con artist from Utah, who gave the young Rick inspiration. Rick attended Taft Middle School in San Diego as a youngster, but he left in the 10th grade to earn $2,000 a week selling phony Gucci purses. However, when his parents' real estate company failed, everything changed. In April 1981, the family was forced to relocate to Las Vegas, Nevada. Rick, who is now a teenager, had to deal with the pregnancy of his girlfriend Kim. Rick courageously chose to accept parenting despite being very young. An additional sad event occurred when the young couple miscarried their first child. They persevered in spite of this, and were married a year later. Thereafter, they had their first child, Corey, who went on to become highly successful and a key member of the family company. They joyfully welcomed Adam, their second child, 2 years later. Another horrible thing occurred here. Rick and Kim split up shortly after Adam was born. However, Rick was not a single father for very long. He began dating Tracy just 9 months after his divorce. A year after his divorce, they were married after dating for around 8 months. Additionally, the pair assumed responsibility for Adam and Corey's care with a new partner. Rick wanted a better source of income because his family had grown. Rick, who at the time was repossessing vehicles at night, was forced to join his father's new company when he launched a 300-square-foot used gold and silver coin store on Las Vegas Boulevard South. As we've already discussed, Rick had a strong interest in history and physics, but he had no idea that the information he acquired in both fields would be useful in the new company his family was starting. The success of the store was aided by Rick's historical knowledge, because he was accessible to provide each item with historical context. The family moved to a more noticeable location on Fremont Street 5 years later. However, they lost their lease after 2 years, so they had to relocate once more. As a natural next step, he and his father then chose to convert the establishment into a pawn shop. One problem they encountered, though, was that a Las Vegas regulation that only granted a certain number of pawn licenses depending on the population of the city prevented them from becoming a full-fledged pawn shop. As soon as the city's population reached the necessary threshold, they planned to apply for a pawn license, and after some legal issues, they eventually received their pawn license. Not far from the Las Vegas Strip, at 713 Las Vegas Boulevard South, the father and son launched the gold and silver pawn store that same year. The father and son first concentrated on selling unusual historical items and particular sports items at their store, but jewelry quickly became their best-selling item. Their company expanded and gained recognition in Las Vegas over time. Now that he was a co-founder of the show and store, Rick had spent the most of his life there, putting in a lot of effort to develop and promote the pawn shop industry. They were disbursing millions of dollars annually by 2005, generating interest revenue in the hundreds of thousands. The business gained notoriety the following year for carrying unique sports memorabilia with intriguing histories. Additionally, they assisted gamblers who would pawn items to earn cash for gas so they could go home. Pawn Stars was born as a result of the History Channel taking notice of their rise in popularity. However, their best-selling item was jewelry. Their company expanded and gained recognition in Las Vegas over time. Now a co-founder of the show and store, Rick had spent the most of his life there, putting in a lot of effort to develop and grow the pawn shop industry. By 2005, they were making millions of loans annually and collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. The business gained notoriety the following year for carrying unique sports memorabilia with intriguing histories. Additionally, they assisted gamblers who would pawn items to earn cash for gas so they could go home. Pawn Stars was born as a result of the History Channel taking notice of their rise in popularity. The concept for Pawn Stars came from Left Field Pictures' Brent Montgomery and Colby Gaines. When they visited Las Vegas in 2008, they were enamored by the assortment of unique and dubious pawn shops. They searched for a family-owned store to use as the backdrop for a television show since they thought that these establishments may be the home of distinctive people. Less than 2 miles from the Las Vegas Strip, they eventually found the Gold and Silver Pawn Store. A 2001 PBS documentary had already focused on this store, and Rick has long desired a show about his store. He had previously made an appearance on a 2003 episode of Dave Attell's Insomniac. When the show was initially proposed to HBO, they rejected the original concept. However, they made it possible for it to be transformed into the family-friendly fashion that we currently love. To better suit what they were filming, the original title, Pawning History, was eventually altered to Pawn Stars. The term is a light-hearted jab at porn stars. Filming for the episode started at the well-known Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. Customers on Pawn Stars bring in a variety of vintage or antique objects, while jewelry is the most often pawned item there. Only a select group of authorized customers are permitted inside the store during filming, and it is frequently closed to the general public. The show made the Harrison family extremely well known. Numerous viewers gave favorable reviews and expressed a want for more, which aided in the show's growth and yearly return. By 2011, Pawn Stars was the History Channel's most popular program, and the second highest rated reality show, after Jersey Shore. Rick published his autobiography, based on my life at the Gold and Silver Deals and Steals, which that year peaked at number 22 on the New York Times bestseller list. Rick separated from Tracy, his second wife, in the same year. After 2 divorces, he announced his engagement to divorced woman Deanna Burdett the following year. The success of the show and his increasing fan base pleased Rick. I Lost My Head in Vegas, an iCarly episode, featured him, Chumlee, and Corey playing themselves. 4 days later, Rick appeared in an episode of another show called The Middle as the proprietor of an antique business. He wed Deanna Burdett at Laguna Beach, California, about this period. Through this marriage, Rick acquired 3 stepdaughters, Marissa, Sienna, and Serena. The History Channel debuted the game show Pornography in July 2014. In order to keep participants from winning money and goods from the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop stock, Rick, Corey, and Chumlee compete against them. Unfortunately, a string of unlucky catastrophes would befall Rick and his family, beginning with the devastating death of the family patriarch. In June 2018, Rick's father passed away. Rick shared the news of his father's passing with more than 250,000 Instagram users, claiming that Parkinson's illness was the reason. The patriarch's death was verified by a Harrison family spokesman. Rick penned an emotional ode to the man who had assisted him in running the family company and provided a close-up picture of his 77-year-old father wearing a black suit, matching spectacles, and a hat. This morning, in the company of his loved ones, Richard Benjamin, the elderly Harrison, died away. Our family will miss him terribly, the group at Gold and Silver Pond, as well as his numerous global admirers. A sincere message expressing the History Channel's grief at the old man's passing was also published. The loss of our buddy Richard the Old Man Harrison, a beloved member of the History and Pawn Stars family, has left us very sad. His honesty and insight will be missed. During this trying time, our thoughts are with the Harrison family. Rick also talked candidly about the influence his father had on him personally. Was my idol, and I was fortunate to have a father who was so cool. He was an amazing family man, and I'm glad I was able to share him with so many others. He went on to say that he led a full life, and that he taught the value of comedy, hard work, and family to people all across the world via Pawn Stars. We are grateful for the prayers and thoughts of everyone. and requested privacy at this time. "I lost a friend, a parent, a teacher and so much more today." He even shared a second picture of his father when he was a young man in a Navy uniform. "This morning, the elderly man lost his protracted fight with Parkinson's. Dad, I love you. I'll see you over there." Rick was devastated by his father's passing, and he was left to take care of the family and the store by himself. Rick married his third wife in September 2020, but he also had to cope with the additional stress of a divorce. Court documents that TMZ was able to get indicate that Rick Harrison and Deanna Burdett may have been so estranged from one another that they were unable to maintain their marriage. They can't get along in marriage because their interests, ideas and preferences have diverged so far, according to Rick's statement in the complaint. The divorce may have gone unnoticed since it took place amid the nationwide George Floyd demonstrations, according to TMZ. Referring to Deanna's 3 children from her previous marriage, Rick told TMZ, "I got 3 great daughters out of it." He also mentioned that the divorce was a mutual choice because the marriage didn't work out. Additionally, he claimed to have moved on. It's evident from the father-daughter pictures he just shared on Instagram that he still views his stepchildren as his own. In an Instagram picture on August 7th, Rick said, "Father-daughter day off-roading." He has said the same thing about several of his stepdaughters. That's a good thing at least. Rick managed everything despite the difficulties with the help of his best buddy Austin Chumley Russell and his son Corey. In the hopes of a brighter life, Rick wed Amanda Palmer, his 4th wife, a year later. Rick's problems, though, didn't stop there. He ran into legal troubles with his own mother, Joanne Rue, 2 years later. USA Today reports that Rick's mother, Joanne Harrison, has sued him for family property and gold and silver pawn shop ownership. The Nevada State Court received the civil action. The complaint names many defendants, including Harrison Properties, Jorick Properties, the Gold and Silver Pawn Store, and Rick Harrison. Because money problems may sour excellent connections, managing a family company can be challenging and difficult. Unfortunately, the mother and son experienced this. Conflicts over money had a significant impact on Rick and Joanne's relationship. Given that his mother had been married to his father for over 60 years, Rick was accused of breaching a contract in his mother's case. However, Rick had her give him 51% of the pawn store when she was in the hospital in the early 2000s, shortly after she awoke from a coma. She wasn't really sure what she was signing at one point. Naturally, this didn't help Rick's reputation because tail followers had always seen of him as a family man who wouldn't abandon his family for financial gain. In actuality, Rick's wife acquired his 49% stake in the pawn store after his father passed away. Nevertheless, she never received the complete financial records of the company from her son. She said that she didn't have accurate documentation for over $500,000 in cash and silver that she thought her spouse owned prior to his passing. She said that Rick had ceased giving her money from her late husband's company stake. Prior to 2020, Rick would regularly send her sums of $25,000. Joanne was also attempting to use the legal system to have that amount restored. Since Joanne reportedly obtained a temporary restraining order against her son to stop him from selling any of the family's assets, many fans believe that Rick's fortune was in jeopardy. Additionally, Rick would be prohibited by the restraining order from relocating, concealing monetary assets, or engaging in any other activity that may lessen her ownership interest in the family firm. A full asset list, specific damages and a court order prohibiting Rick from spending his mother's money were also requested in the complaint. Additionally, he had to create a constructive trust to relinquish any influence over her possessions. But in a subsequent interview on the matter, Rick stated that the claims are false. Additionally, "I think that others are trying to influence my 81-year-old mother for their own gain. According to Joanne's request, I am afraid and uncertain if I will have enough money to cover my medical and personal expenses every month, while Rick enjoys his comfortable life as a celebrity in control of all the family businesses and finances." An story claims that Joanne, who was over 80, had several health issues and needed 24-hour care, which may run up to $15,000 a month. Rick said that news stories were the only source of information regarding the restraining order request. "I've made several attempts to get in touch with her over the last few months, but I haven't been successful," he stated. My mother actually owns all of one of the businesses she is suing. The Pawn Stars player seems perplexed by his mother's legal action. Even though Rick had overcome many obstacles, his greatest and most devastating blow was still to come. Rick lost his kid tragically in January 2024. Adam died after a fentanyl and methamphetamine overdose, according to a Clark County, Nevada, public information officer. The death was deemed accidental by the Clark County Office of the Medical Examiner. When another resident pointed out that he hadn't been there since January 17, worries increased. When the landlord finally discovered that he was not responding, law enforcement was called. 2 days later, Rick posted a picture of himself and Adam at a restaurant on Instagram to convey the devastating news of his son's death. "You'll always be in my heart," he wrote. "Adam, you are loved," coupled with an emoji of a crushed heart. According to family spokeswoman Laura Herlovich, Adam reportedly overdosed on fentanyl and died on January 22. "We are very sorry to hear of Adam's demise. As we grieve his passing, please respect our privacy," she urged. In a statement, Rick also discussed the issue and emphasized the necessity for a more serious response to the fentanyl problem in our nation. Many others expressed their sympathies after Rick's heartfelt Instagram tribute to Adam, including Donald Trump Jr., who only wrote, "I'm so sorry, man." Adam's elder brother, Corey, also posted a picture of themselves as children on his Instagram page saying, "I'll always love you, Bubba." Adam Harrison apparently worked at Gold and Silver Pawn for a while before becoming a plumber, even though he wasn't on Pawn Stars. Adam didn't appear to be interested in being on the show, as Corey had previously mentioned. Rick maintains his optimism and hides his suffering behind his work despite all the difficulties and grief in his life. He even had a strong interest in politics. He supported Daniel Rodemer for the 3rd Congressional District of Nevada and Donald Trump for president. At one time, he even thought about running for governor of Nevada. Rick also hinted at a possible U.S. Senate race. "Many members of the party have discussed it with me, and I always think about it. I'm keeping my choices open, but I haven't decided yet." Without a doubt, people adore him because of his work. Therefore, it was hardly shocking when he received his Kentucky Colonel title in a Pawn Stars offshoot show that was mostly shot at Locust Grove. In their magnificent parlor, he was admitted as a member of the Kentucky Colonels. The governor of Kentucky bestows the highest distinction, the Kentucky Colonel. Things appear to be improving romantically for him as well. His spokesman told People that he is presently seeing a nurse named Angie Polishkin in Las Vegas. Rick stated in a statement, "I met Angie 6 months ago. She works as a nurse in Las Vegas. In honor of her birthday, we had spent the last few weeks in Europe." Additionally, he recently shared a number of pictures of the two of them looking dapper for a classy night out in Paris, providing insight into their relationship. Rick is no longer employed at the pawn business full-time. He currently performs part-time in Pawn Star shows instead. The rumors of a life sentence that some people have discussed are very different from the semi-retirement he is currently enjoying. Rick is enjoying his semi-retirement with his grandchildren and family, despite a few legal troubles.